women. Bhavna is in the studio with me, and she recently spoke at the UN Status of Women Conference up in New York City. Bhavna, welcome to Front Porch Radio.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yes, I am so excited I got to meet you via another Front Porch frequent guest mechanism.
Yeah.
She introduced me to you. She came into the Dandelion and she was like, you must come into the garden and listen to this beautiful woman sing. And you are a beautiful singer, and hopefully before the show ends we'll be able to get some of that live on air. But we've come here to talk today about your experience up at the UN conference with the status of women. But before we get to that, you grew up in the Barbados.
Yeah.
Why don't you go ahead and tell us about that experience, and we can get to know your background a little bit and your perspective from where you come.
Sure. Barbados to me is one of the best, most beautiful places on earth. And I've been to a lot of different places, but I'm kind of biased to there. You know, there's beaches all around. It's a very island, laid-back atmosphere. Everyone's in shorts and tank tops, and it's just what you imagine living on an island would be like. So it was a much different experience growing up there, and then moving here for school. Life here is a little bit more fast-paced, and that took a little bit getting used to, but it's a wonderful island. If you ever get a chance, go visit. But it was a really laid-back island-type environment.
That's amazing. Gosh, I think we're all a little bit jealous of you right now. And so, what was that shift like for you? I mean, I imagine you're on island time, which is like, there's not really a clock.
Which is an hour late everywhere.
And so, for some of our listeners that haven't maybe been exposed to it, tell us about the Hindu faith, and maybe how does it differ from Christianity, and is it more of a, I know it's a religion, but it's also a cultural experience.
Yeah. Hinduism basically is seeing God in everything. It can be a very simple religion, or it can be very complex, and Buddhism also falls in to Hinduism as well. But mainly the practices that we do see God in everything, the plants, everything, this chair, everything, and other people as well, most importantly, and that have a lot of different rituals and stuff that we do that are more traditional as well, that date back to India. And through those practices and rituals and stuff like that, we can attain a spiritual, personal connection with God. For me, one of the things that I practiced most was the singing. That for me was my route to spirituality, and that's kind of what I use. But I love Hinduism because there's so many different, it's like different routes that you can take. People say that we have different gods, and we do. We have different aspects of God, but we have one God and different roles, just as a mother would have. A mother's a teacher, a cook, you know, all that, soccer mom. It's kind of the same thing, and it just makes it easier for you as an individual, I believe, to relate to whatever aspect you relate with. For me, that was music. So, but it can be very complex, looking at the entire big picture, but on a very simple level, it's seeing God in everything and everyone.
Place that where everything else is different.
Yeah, it was very, very challenging at times, because I didn't even, just that simple question that you asked me, like, what is Hinduism, and just that alone, I mean, as a child growing up, if you don't know how to answer that properly, you probably don't want to answer that for the rest of your life. Right. You know what I mean? So that alone, I had to learn, you know, really ask questions, and sometimes it felt like I was asking questions to my parents who weren't always 100% sure, because they brought that religion over with them too. So reading a lot, learning a lot, seeking out people, writing emails to scholars and stuff that helped me answer that question. And
so this gives us kind of a segue into the fact that you spoke to the United Nations at the Status of Women's Conference from the perspective of the Hindu faith. Can you tell us about that experience?
Yes. First of all, I think it was such a humbling experience. experience to walk into the UN building, knowing that so many world leaders were there before me. That in itself, it kind of felt just like a very neutral ground, like there was no separation, regardless of if I were Hindu or if they were Christian or if we were black or white, green, yellow. It didn't really matter, because there it was everyone. It was kind of like you felt the unity when you walked in. So that for me was the first thing that was very humbling to me. Fear for women there, and I think that that media is reporting it now. I think that probably maybe has been happening, but I think also due to social media.
Right.
I know a lot of Indian singers and whatnot that are popular. We have, like you guys have Hollywood, we have Bollywood. So because of social media, I think that they've been speaking out, because it's just not right what's happening over there. And then because of that, I think the New York Times did some reporting and did some statistics where I think it's one woman or one child or something like that every 22 minutes is being raped over there. And that's appalling if you think of all the things you do and every 22-minute increments in your day. Try to count the amount of girls that is. It's horrendous. That is a story that has been popularized, and but I want to say that that's one story of many, many, many stories. But because of that, I think it gave more of an awareness to the Indian government. One of the reasons that I believe that this is happening too is there's not proper measurements for women, women's protection of the, like we can, if something happens, we can call 911, we can call the police.
Like here in America.
Right here in America, but they can't do that. They don't have those. They don't have that type of protection yet. And I think that because that story was popularized, that they are now putting in place some of those measurements. It may be a slow process, but at least it's starting to happen. And the more that these stories are popularized, that I think that they'll slowly make changes. But I think that the biggest and best testament to her is not only that award, but also the fact that I know that we here have been speaking with the government over there as well to see maybe what can they change, what can they do in terms of changing the way that their governmental structure is. And in fact, in about next month, or actually this day next month, I'll be heading over to the White House to speak.
Seriously?
Yeah. Speak and participate in a conference there as well, dealing with some of these issues. And so it's great because we feel like our
girl is sassy. Look at her going right to the top. You went to the UN, you're going to the White House.
And I'm excited about it.
Okay, so I want my listeners to pay attention to the fact, because this is what I love the most, is, you're 20 years old, you saw something that needed to be done, and you're like, I gotta do something. And you didn't know what you were going to do, but now you've spoken to the UN, and you're going to the White House. And so how did you start? Like, what was your, why are you so empowered? Why do I even have to ask someone that, right? Right?
In today's society, you do.
You do.
It's appalling.
Males and females both. Like, it's not just females being empowered. A lot of men aren't empowered either. So,
yeah.
So what conditions were you raised in, or like was it just one person that believed in you? Like, why do you think that you feel like you can just walk into the UN and the White House like you're doing?
Well, I wish it was so easy to just walk in there, but I know. I really just wanted to do something, and I kind of felt it on the inside of me, like when I saw these things happening, and then I saw a lot of wrong being done in our culture, just personally too. In some of the organizations that I was a part of before, I felt like I didn't have a voice, in that organization. I thought, man, I just want to branch out on my own and do my own thing. And I spent a summer, I remember, going to different Indian organizations and trying to see, like kind of what they were doing. And I just wanted to get involved. That was my first thing. And then it just never felt right when I went there. And then I remember driving by downtown Orlando, and there was a quote on the wall that said, if you see a lack of something, start it. Basically was what the quote was. If you something about start what you want to be a part of. And I was like, man, I guess I should start it. There's nothing. You can also just if you can't remember that, if you just type in HASC into Google, it'll pop up, and everything that we've been doing will be on there. I also have the Huffington Post covered my trip to the UN.
Oh.
And so that's going to be coming out this week.
Okay, this week. We'll post that on Front Porch Radio's Facebook page when that comes out, so that everyone can put a face and a voice and the experience behind that too. Okay, so we only have a few more minutes, and you are a classically trained musician, and so I definitely want to share that. I got to hear that. It was like the middle of the day, and Mecca's like, you have to hear this woman sing, and then so that's how I met you. And at that time I'm like, oh my God, this beautiful, flowering goddess woman singing this amazing thing in the garden, and then come to find out all of this other amazing work that you do. So so let's take a little listening break and